Welcome to another episode of the Supernatural World podcast. For today's episode, we are going to be talking about the true story of Robert the Doll. The story of Robert the Doll dates back to the 1900s when Eugene Robert Otto was given a handmade doll by one of his parents' servants. Eugene named the doll Robert and became very attached to the new doll. He was always with the doll and claimed to be good friends with it. After a while, things with Robert became terrifying. One night, Eugene awoke to find Robert sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at him. Then, according to Eugene, Robert began destroying his room. While this was happening, Eugene's parents were woken by the screams of Eugene. They rushed into Eugene's room and found Robert still sitting on the edge of Eugene's bed, while Eugene was curled up on his bed in a frightened manner. He kept saying over and over again, "Robert did it." Robert's parents often would hear Eugene talking to the doll, and terrifyingly would hear the doll respond to Eugene. The parents themselves even claimed that they saw Robert talk with their own eyes. Many people, including Eugene's parents, would see Robert running up and down the stairs quite frequently. Even with all of this going on, Eugene and Robert stayed close throughout his entire childhood. Eventually, Eugene grew up and moved out of the house and lived a life without Robert. That is, until the death of Eugene's parents. Once Eugene's parents died, he and his wife decided to move into his old home. There, he was reunited with Robert. Eugene decided that Robert should have a room all to himself, which his wife was originally okay with, but after a while asked if they could put Robert in the attic, as it would make her feel uneasy. Robert did not enjoy being put in the attic, and there are multiple reports of devilish laughter along with running footsteps being heard from the attic that Robert lived in. Neighbors started complaining to Eugene, saying that the doll placed in the attic window was freaking them out and their guests over. Eugene, who put Robert in the attic, said that this was impossible, as he placed Robert away from the window when he locked him in the attic. When Eugene checked the attic, however, Robert was placed by the window. Eugene would try and move Robert away from the window of the attic, but Robert always ended up right back at the window. This continued until 1974 when Eugene died. A new family then moved into the house, one of the new members being a 10-year-old daughter. When she discovered Robert the doll, she was delighted by the doll and quickly started playing with him. She then reportedly started to become terrified of the doll. She claimed that Robert was alive and trying to kill her. She would often wake in the middle of the night screaming in terror because she claimed Robert was moving and going to hurt her. After a while of this, her parents decided to get rid of the doll. Her parents did just that, and Robert is now currently being held in East Martello Fort. Here he is visited by people all over the globe who have heard the story of Robert and want to see the doll for themselves. The story of the doll is still happening today, with multiple people, including staff at the museum, having reported that they heard the doll laughing, and some even claim that they saw the doll moving around and pressing his hand to the glass. There are also many people who claim to have tried taking a picture of Robert, but while they were trying, their cameras stopped working only to start working again once they left the museum. This is the story of Robert the Doll, and it is an interesting story because it is still happening today. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at CWTmedia20. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Supernatural World podcast. Follow us on whatever platform you're currently listening on, and thank you for listening.